I never expected betrayal to come dressed in a tailored suit and a rehearsed smile. After all, this was supposed to be a fresh start, a new city, a new opportunity, a new chapter. I had poured my soul into that company, stayed late most nights, skipped vacations, answered calls on weekends, even when my mother was in the hospital. Because that's what they said success took: grit, loyalty, sacrifice. But in the end, all it took for it to fall apart was a single meeting. Effective immediately, we're reducing your salary by 20%, my new employer said, not a hint of hesitation in his voice. It's a company-wide restructure, you understand. Understand? Oh, I understood. I understood that after 8 months of bending over backwards for this company, training new hires, picking up the slack when others quit, working unpaid overtime, this was the thanks I got. No warning, no discussion, just a cold cut to my income with a condescending pat on the back. And the worst part? This wasn't my first rodeo. My last job had collapsed under poor leadership and mass layoffs, and I had clawed my way out of that mess, thinking this new company would be different. I moved states for this role. I left behind family, friends, and the small comforts of home to be part of something meaningful. Instead, I got lies masked as policy, promises rewritten in invisible ink, and the bitter taste of betrayal once again. At first, I was stunned, silent, blinking, as if my brain hadn't quite caught. Up with my ears. Did I hear that right? A 20% pay cut? After all the late hours and missed holidays? After helping save their biggest account 2 months ago? It felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. Again. I left that meeting like a ghost, floating. Back to my office, numb. The walls seemed tighter, the air colder. I stared at the computer screen, my half-written email blinking back at me like some cruel joke. That's when the anger started to creep in. Not the loud, impulsive kind of anger. This was quieter, hotter, the kind that simmers, the kind that remembers. Because this wasn't just about money. No, money was just the symptom. The disease was disrespect, betrayal, devaluation. I had sacrificed so much. And for what? I thought back to when I was offered the role, how they praised my work ethic, my can-do spirit, how they said, we're a family here, and we reward loyalty. Every word now felt like a mockery. I had played their game. I had believed in them. But that day, something inside me shifted. I wasn't going to accept this. Not this time. Not quietly. Not with my head down and my mouth shut. No, this wasn't going to be another story of silent suffering and polite resignation. I wasn't going to smile through the betrayal, hand over my badge, and disappear. They wanted me to take a 20% pay cut like it was a favor, like I should be grateful. Instead, I gave them my notice. And what followed? Let's just say they never saw it coming. Because while they were busy underestimating me, I was already planning my next move. And this time, I wasn't just walking away. I was taking back control. The moment I handed in my resignation, I saw it. A flicker of panic. A flash of something they tried to mask with professional platitudes and forced smiles. Oh, we're sorry to see you go. Of course, we respect your decision. But the cracks were already showing. See, the timing wasn't convenient for them. Not at all. The company had just landed a high-profile client, a whale account worth millions, and I was the only one who understood the full scope of the integration. I had led the client onboarding, built the framework, and developed every custom module. No one else had my level of access, and worse, for them, I had never written anything down. They'd told me I was indispensable. Well, now they'd get to test that theory. But the real problem ran deeper. This wasn't just a 20% cut in pay. It was a 20% cut in dignity. A message sent loud and clear. You're replaceable. You're lucky to be here. You'll take what we give, or we'll find someone who will. It was psychological warfare, dressed up in spreadsheets and HR jargon. The people who had once praised my work ethic were now dodging eye contact. The same managers who'd leaned on me for answers now tiptoed around me like I was a threat. And maybe I was. The betrayal at its core wasn't about numbers. It was the betrayal of values, of humanity. I wasn't a person to them. I was a line item, a liability to trim. What really infuriated me was discovering that the company-wide pay cut was a lie. A few quiet conversations, and the truth slipped out. Only mid-level employees were affected. Executives? Unscathed. In fact, some had just received bonuses for strategic resilience. Strategic resilience? Are you kidding me? I was the one who stayed late nights to prevent systems failures. I was the one who worked through the holidays to deliver on unrealistic timelines. Where was my resilience bonus? Oh, right. It was a pay cut. That was the moment I realized I hadn't just been betrayed. I'd been used. The manipulation had been slow and deliberate. At first, they made me feel important, offering a decent salary, a relocation package, career growth opportunities. But once I was entrenched, once I had built their systems and earned their trust, they started stripping away the perks. First, it was the project bonuses. Then, it was the remote work option. Then came the overtime that somehow didn't make it onto my paycheck. And now, this. The worst part was how many of my coworkers were in the same boat but too scared to say anything. Fear is a powerful silencer. People whispered in break rooms, vented in private chats, but no one dared speak up. They had mortgages, kids, visas, health conditions. This company thrived on that fear. It weaponized people's dependence against them. And I realized I couldn't just leave quietly. If I walked out and kept my mouth shut, they'd do it again, to someone else, and someone else after that. This wasn't just about reclaiming my dignity, it was about exposing the rot. I spent that entire weekend in a fog of anger and strategy. I couldn't sleep, could barely eat. My thoughts raced with every moment of humiliation, every broken promise, every smug smile from management. And in the center of it all was one simple, dangerous thought. They don't think I'll fight back. But they were wrong, because the girl they thought would sit quietly and accept their crumbs, she was gone. And the woman replacing her? She was ready to burn the whole facade down, brick by brick. Walking away would have been the easy choice. Just move on, start fresh, find another job. People told me that all the time. Don't. Burn bridges. Just let it go. Karma will take care of it. But karma needs a little help sometimes. This wasn't just about me. It was about every exhausted employee who gave their all and got slapped in the face for it. Every parent who missed their kid's birthday for a late meeting. Every intern who was promised a promotion that never came. Every immigrant worker who couldn't quit because of their visa status. It was about us. People like me are the backbone of companies like this. We do the work, hold it together, clean up the messes, while leadership takes the credit, the perks, the fat checks. They built their empire on our backs, then kicked us to the curb when we weren't convenient anymore. That 20% pay cut? It would have meant losing my apartment in 2 months. I wasn't living lavishly. I was just getting by. Rent, food, student loans. That temporary adjustment, as they called it, would have buried me in debt. But what infuriated me most was how easily they dismissed it, like it was no big deal. Like I should have thanked them for not letting me go entirely. It was the casual cruelty of it all. I had watched my coworkers break under the pressure. Some cried in the bathroom. Some quit in silence. One of them had a panic attack after being told she'd have to work weekends for no additional pay to demonstrate commitment. What kind of place demands that kind of loyalty while offering none in return? And what scared me was how easily it could happen again. If I didn't do something, if I just walked away, then this would be the pattern. Another company, another set of promises, another exploitation disguised as opportunity. I kept thinking about my younger self. The girl who used to believe hard work was enough, that loyalty would be rewarded, that good people rose to the top. She needed to see the truth. She needed someone to stand up and say, "You're not crazy. You're not overreacting. This is wrong." And if I didn't stand up now, when would I? I had given so much of my life to companies like this. Spent holidays alone in office cubicles, took calls at midnight, chased promotions like they were lifelines. I had convinced myself that sacrifice was noble, that burning out was just part of the climb. But I was done pretending that mistreatment was ambition. I thought about my mom, too. She raised me on her own, working 2 jobs, always telling me to know your worth. She used to say, "Don't let anyone treat you like you're lucky to be in the room. You earned your place." I had forgotten that for a while. But not anymore. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming something I'd lost, a sense of self, power, control. It was about shining a light in the dark corners they thought no one would ever look. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to be another casualty of corporate cruelty. I was going to be the reckoning. I didn't know exactly how it would play out yet, but I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. They thought I would fade away. They assumed I'd pack my things, maybe write a polite exit email, and disappear like everyone else they'd discarded. But I wasn't going out like that. Not this time. The plan started forming that night, long after the resignation email had been sent. I sat alone in my apartment, surrounded by moving boxes and silence, with nothing but the low hum of my laptop and the burning clarity of betrayal. My heart was pounding, not from fear, but from focus. If they wanted to play corporate games, I'd show them what it looks like when the quiet worker decides to fight back. Step 1. Documentation. I had kept everything: emails, meeting, notes, Slack messages, HR memos. Years of training in project management had made me a meticulous record keeper. Every request, every policy change, every off-the-record demand, I had it all. Buried in those files were receipts of their lies, the unpaid overtime, the uneven pay cuts, and even messages that directly contradicted what they claimed in meetings. I started categorizing it: dates, names, patterns. Step 2. Leverage. Wasn't just any employee. I had built their system, literally. Their client portal? I designed the architecture. Their data migration process? I customized it for their most sensitive clients. They never documented my work because they trusted me too much. Or maybe they just didn't bother. Either way, I held the keys. And they knew it. That was my leverage, not to blackmail, but to reveal. If they wanted to treat me like I was disposable, fine. But they were going to learn just how dependent they were on what I built. Step 3. Allies. I reached out to a few coworkers, quietly, carefully, ones I trusted. I wasn't about to start a revolution, but I wanted the truth to be known. And I wasn't the only one angry. Turns out, when you shine a light, people come out of the shadows. One had a recording of a department head admitting they'd only cut salaries for non-essential staff to avoid backlash from investors. Another had HR emails showing illegal scheduling practices. Someone else had pay stubs proving newer employees, some with less experience, were being paid more than long-term staff. We weren't disgruntled. We were done being exploited. Step B. 4. Exposure. I didn't go to social media right away. That's what they would have expected. Some angry post, easy to dismiss as bitterness. No. I went to the places that mattered. First, I submitted a formal complaint to the Department of Labor, complete with documentation. Then, I anonymously submitted everything to a journalist I knew from college, someone who had covered corporate abuses before. She was interested immediately. Finally, I started reaching out to key clients I had worked with, very professionally, of course, just to give a heads up that I would no longer be managing their accounts, and to suggest they request full documentation for continuity. When they asked why I was leaving, I didn't lie. I told the truth, calmly, clearly, and without a trace of emotion. Because that's the thing about the truth. When you say it plainly, it's powerful. My plan wasn't to scream, it was to reveal. Let the facts do what anger never could. Let the truth burn what the lies had built. I wasn't looking for a dramatic takedown. I didn't need revenge in the form of chaos. I wanted justice. I wanted accountability. I wanted people to see. And slowly, they started to. You could almost feel it, like a shift in the air. Leadership started sending out panicked emails. HR scheduled town halls. They tried to plug holes in a ship that was already sinking. But I was just getting started. The most important thing I learned through this process: power changes hands the moment you decide not to be silent. They bank on your silence. They thrive on your compliance. The second you stop giving them that, they panic. After laying the groundwork, I moved methodically, step by step. No explosions. Just steady pressure. Step 1. Control the narrative. I crafted my own story, carefully, factually, but with impact. On my last day, I wrote an exit email. Not to vent, not to lash out, but to inform. I detailed what happened to me, clearly and without exaggeration. The pay cut, the selective targeting, the exploitation of loyalty. I shared my gratitude for the coworkers who had supported me and encouraged others to know their rights. The response? Immediate. I received dozens of private replies. Some were in shock, others were grateful. One simply said, "Thank you for saying what we've all been afraid to." Step 2. Create a paper trail. Documentation is your armor. I had archived months of communication proving unethical behavior, meetings where we were told to falsify timesheets to look more productive, demands to work weekends under threat of performance reviews, and contradictory policy memos. Everything was timestamped, categorized, and stored off the company's servers. That digital folder, it became my insurance. When HR tried to call me in for a checkout conversation, I told them, politely but firmly, that I would only discuss anything further in writing. Suddenly, the tone changed. There were no reprimands, no legal threats, just a strained, "We wish you the best." Because they knew. Step 3. File formal complaints. Too many employees think labor laws don't protect them, but in many cases they do. I filed complaints with both the Department of Labor and the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. I provided every piece of proof: the unpaid overtime, the discriminatory targeting of certain employee groups for the pay restructure, and the retaliatory practices. I didn't expect these agencies to take them down overnight, but I knew the investigation alone would force them to squirm. It would cost them money, time, and reputation, and that was enough for now. Step 4. Speak to the right people. Remember that journalist I contacted? She did her research. She interviewed me anonymously, verified my documents, and found other sources inside the company. 2 weeks later, the article went live on a major business site. The headline hit hard. Inside the pay cut culture: how one company rewards loyalty with exploitation. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every employee they had burned and buried. The article didn't name me, but the story? It was unmistakably mine. Step 5. Take back the power publicly, but smartly. I updated my LinkedIn with a new post. No drama. Just the truth. I explained that I had resigned due to unethical changes at my previous job and was now looking for companies that valued integrity and transparency. That post went viral within my network. Recruiters messaged me. Former coworkers privately thanked me. The company? They tried to do damage control. Suddenly, their social media was full of forced positivity, posts about employee appreciation and mental health awareness. Too late. The mask had slipped. And here's the real twist. 2 of their biggest clients I had brought in, dropped them within a month. Quietly, discreetly. But I knew why. Because truth, when told in the right way, doesn't need to scream. Advice. For anyone stuck where I was, document everything. Keep your communication professional, but save every email, message, and directive. Know your rights. Don't assume you're powerless. Agencies exist to protect you, but you have to be willing to speak up. Connect with others. You're never as alone as you feel. Find allies, even if it's just one person. Tell your story. Your experience has value, and sharing it could protect someone else. I didn't just walk away from that job. I walked into something stronger, a version of myself that wouldn't be gaslit, minimized, or silenced again. And the best part? They had no idea what was coming. The fallout came slowly at first. A ripple, not a wave. But it picked up momentum faster than anyone at the company could control. The article had done its job. Emails started circulating between leadership. Whispers of legal exposure, brand damage, and client retention strategy leaked through the cracks. I wasn't there anymore, but word gets around, especially when you have allies still inside. But the final confrontation? That came not with fists or fire, but with truth. 3 weeks after I left, I got a call, not from HR or my manager, but from the CEO. He tried to play it cool. Said he respected my decision to leave, and that he hoped we could talk things through. He mentioned the article without referencing it directly, pretending like it was just some unfortunate coincidence. Then came the kicker. We'd like to offer you a consulting role at your original salary, plus a bonus. We really need someone with your insight to stabilize things. I almost laughed. After gutting my pay, undervaluing my work, and treating me like I was expendable, they wanted to buy my silence with a bonus check? But I stayed calm. I let him speak. I wanted him to hear how ridiculous he sounded. Thank you, I said smoothly, but I'm no longer available. I've already accepted a new position, with a company that values people over profit margins. Silence. Then, as if he couldn't help himself, he pushed, I just want to make sure you're not continuing to share confidential information. You know, that could lead to consequences. There it was, the threat, the mask slipping. But what he didn't know was that I'd been 10 steps ahead all along. Everything I shared had been public knowledge, stripped of any proprietary data, vetted by a legal professional. The journalist had done her due diligence. There were no leaks, no violations, just facts. So I smiled, even though he couldn't see it. Oh, I've been very careful. I know exactly where the line is. Maybe your HR department should have considered that before trying to silence employees through intimidation. Click. He hung up. That call was the last gasp of a man who thought power made him untouchable, and now he was choking on his own hubris. In the months that followed, things continued to unravel. 2 senior managers resigned under pressure. A client lawsuit surfaced, something about misrepresentation of staff qualifications. The company's reputation took a hit that no rebranding could patch. And me? I moved on. Landed a new job in a healthier environment, with a manager who asked about my goals, not just deadlines. I took time for myself, reconnected with old friends, got my spark back. For the first time in years, I didn't dread Mondays. But more than that, I regained something I thought I'd lost forever. Self-respect. I had looked power in the eye and refused to flinch. I had faced down a system designed to break people like me and refused to bend. And here's the part they never expect. When you take back control of your own narrative, when you fight back with facts, integrity, and courage, they lose their grip. You become untouchable in a way they can never be. Because titles and bonuses fade, power built on fear collapses. But truth? Truth echoes. So no, I didn't take the pay cut. I took my dignity, my voice, and my power back. And in the end, that cost them more than they ever expected.